All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Conveyor Podcast. Today we have Nick Wesley-James, the founder of Ribbon Business. We are going to be talking about what I like to call pollinator type of businesses, which is a business that yeah, as many people know, I love entrepreneurship. I think economic development is one of the most important parts of making our society great. And I think entrepreneurship is the thin edge of the wedge. I think that it's important not just for people who want to take radical independence and creating something for themselves, but it's also a way for folks to grow and sort of mentor and bring other people along who don't necessarily have that independence in themselves. And what I love about talking with pollinator businesses like Nick's is that his is one that helps facilitate more entrepreneurship. Not only that, Nick also, as you know, the Conveyor podcast is all about entrepreneurial communications. We're learning about how business leaders are building communities, bringing people along, going to market, casting their vision. But Nick himself, he has a military background and he focuses on communications as his role in the military. So we'll be able to talk, if you want to talk about truly entrepreneurial communications, think about being in the field and trying to organize what's happening in a military environment. So thank you for your service. Thanks for spending time with me today. And thank you for talking about ribbons. So Nick, welcome.
No problem. Thanks, Quinn. Happy to be here.
So Nick, what is Ribbon's business, and what's the mission that sort of powers the business?
Yeah, so we've got an aspirational mission at Ribbon. We want to make it as easy to administer a Canadian business as it is to get a paycheck. Definitely a little bit aspirational, but that's kind of what with the beat of our drum, what we work towards. So think all that crap that entrepreneurs do that isn't making them money. We're doing what they're there for. Think like back office, think registrations with the government, filings, taxes, bookkeeping. That kind of clunky overhead is where we like focus our efforts. And we try to make it really as seamless as possible for entrepreneurs just to get that done.
And what type of businesses are you working the most closely with?
Yeah, sure. So it's kind of neat. We have a few different categories of businesses that we see attracted to our offering. Um, so we've got some of the traditional tech companies. So think like early stage tech company, kind of before you get any venture funding, you want to just kind of get your books a little bit in order. We see a group of those. Our larger group though is typically self-employed entrepreneurs, generally making above 100K per year. So think things like self-employed consultants, wealth management, marketing consultant is actually our most common customer. Um, those people are probably going to have revenue coming in, and they really want someone just to kind of take a lot of that burden off their hands. And it's not really worth their time to dig so much into the details.
And are you predominantly working with people who are just launching their business and doing this wayfinding with what it takes to set up and launch and then sort of administer and manage day to day?
We get about three quarters new businesses, one quarter existing businesses. So we play in the kind of in the corporate governance, compliance, legal docs, automated side, also in the tax side. So you get existing businesses that come to us. Honestly, they're behind, and the CRA is mad at them. That's a pretty common one. And then we also have a lot of the new businesses. They kind of a lot of like repeat entrepreneurs, or they have like those contracts already lined up, so they're really kind of pretty certain about the revenue. They come to us to make sure they do everything correct.
I think what you're doing is super important because I think that entrepreneurship is about empowerment. Folks who have certain skill sets or vision around bringing something to market need to be able to do that in as friction free a way as possible. And Canada ranks pretty highly when it comes to doing business. Yet there, ostensibly is still a lot of friction. Canada probably ranks top 10. Yeah, I don't know if you have a, do you have a stat on that, I think?
No, I don't have a stat on that, unfortunately. No. But
So I know Canada, there are, I can imagine in other parts of the world where in order to set up your business, you need a bank account, or in order to set up your bank account, you need a business. And there are these sort of, what the proper term is Kafka-esque. Like it's like these like brutal administrative loops that people get stuck on. And Canada's not that bad, but at the same time, I remember hearing years ago a very notable Toronto entrepreneur talking about as his company was scaling, his personal credit card was still being guaranteed by him personally. Or no, his business credit card was still being guaranteed by him personally. And if anyone ever sets up a new banking relationship or anything related to finances in particular, there's quite a few steps to develop trust with all of the institutions that you need to grow a business. I'm just emphasizing how important of a point this is for what you're doing, and I praise you for it. It's great.
yeah, it's so funny because whenever we get a new client that's been on their own for a while, it's not like if they get something wrong, it's like how many things are wrong. It's just if you think about complying with, the business registries, with the CRA, with the provincial business registries, with the provincial tax authorities, it's pretty much impossible to get it right. That said, it's probably not the game you want to play, but I think the government's not always that aggressive with enforcement. So I think I got to speak to someone in the government about this, but I think they probably think it's a balance of like how complicated do we make and how impossible do we make these policies, contrasting with like how aggressively do they enforce those policies on small businesses. But that's like not really the decision you want to have. You want to just like casually keep in compliance. Like you don't want to be like, oh, I hope the government doesn't check this. But yeah, I wish the government would make it a little bit easier. Like it's a bit overwhelming, particularly now with businesses. You think, you're going to be operating across Canada. You'll hire an employee in a different province to do virtually. You'll be selling across Canada real quick, and having to look at each province separately, differently. It's really like quite challenging for entrepreneurs.
There is a bit of that this isn't exactly the sexiest topic, but it's what affects business owners every day. Whether it's a e-commerce store that now is selling across the country and they have to be in compliance with Prince Edward Island and Saskatchewan registration laws, or even selling internationally and knowing about once your business, you can get caught by being successful too. There are things like tax withholding or submitting HST, and just staying on top of all those dates are quite challenging. And yet most business owners aren't in there are some folks who are really like, spreadsheet folks. They're building a business based on like pursuing an opportunity, like they might have an accounting background or have that sort of mindset. But then I think you're really speaking to the craftspeople, the folks who have something that they want to build. They're, a carpenter or, lawn maintenance or building a software startup, and they have this skill set and they want to do it on their own, not work for anybody. And then they're obligated to go and figure out all of these back office things that you're helping them with.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. It's just like the small guys suffer the most. A big company, you're just going to pay someone. Maybe you're a professional. Like you're going to have a full team on staff doing it. And even you hear in the news a lot of these like trade barrier discussions. I feel like a lot of those are bigger trade barriers, like more macro scale. But when you get down to like the day-to-day experience of a very small entrepreneur, those like seemingly small issues, like again, these registrations, etc., for big companies are actually quite challenging for small companies. So I think that's really just getting lost in the discussion. And it's like, I just can't help but think like let's just try to make it easier. Let's focus on like small entrepreneurs too. Let's like make their life easier, enable them.
So we just talked about sort of the problem area that you're focusing on with Ribbon. Give me a little bit of background on the business, the 411 of the on the business. So talk about how long you've been in business for, company size, who you have to thank for where you are today, all of that.
Yeah, sure. So looking back, we started Ribbon 2 years ago. We just hired our fifth team member about a month ago, which is pretty exciting. So we're comprised of two technical team, um, myself, and then two on the accounting team. So the I started it with Vishal, co-founder, 2 years ago. We went through a program called Ribbon. So not called Ribbon, it's called Antler. It's like a VC-backed incubator program out of Toronto. So pretty cool experience. And that's actually where I met him. It's always neat when you meet someone starting a business. It's always a little bit uncertain how long that'll stick around. And I wish I had like a brilliant thought about how we thought of Ribbon, but literally it was just we're going through the process. Everyone's starting businesses, and it seems like everyone's talking to lawyers, accountants. They're all like asking people for advice, and like I couldn't help but think that like they're not that special. Like I don't really understand why I need custom specific advice. And really, I thought it should just all be in a box. I was like, I just think we should take this stuff and put it in a box, and every business can just open the box and use that to run. Um, it is kind of funny though. I was thinking back a little bit about how, in hindsight, these what could like have led to this honestly simple thought. I was quite entrepreneurial in high school, so I did lots of like computer repair, mowing the lawn, and I remember being like pretty into business, like selling stuff, delivering the service. I'd say my compliance was pretty off as a 14-year-old. I remember like I thought it looked more professional to add HST to an invoice, so I was like, I'm just gonna add an HST line. But and like things like that, like so challenging. And I look back and I'm like, okay, like if I had an easy solution, I would have just done the easy solution. But there just like isn't one. Like there's no easy way to get these processes done, and so I just dodged them as like when I was in high school. So it kind of like I think that leads into it a bit also. Like, how can I make my life easier for someone like me back then who doesn't have the at that time I didn't have the capability, or like someone who doesn't have the time. How do you just make it like seamless? Like, how do you take this and put it in a box?
Tell me a bit more about the business. So you talked about having two customer segments,
Yep.
and maybe talk about the challenges, not the challenge, but the priorities you're undergoing with right now as you grow the business. I think it also,
Sure.
before jumping into that, I think I want to add that antler is a good example of another type of pollinator. It's from what I recall, antler is it's like an idea stage. So it's like folks who come in with a rough idea of what they want to launch, and it's like at the earliest stage of entrepreneurship, correct?
Yeah.
For the way that
Yes.
that business works.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool program. So I think it's like a 12-week program. What they do is you apply to it and they bring in, I think, like 50 entrepreneurs that don't have anything on the go, or not on the go. They don't have any, they're not working on a business, but they want to. And they just kind of encourage you to honestly make teammates and then pitch Dragon's Den style at the end for funding. So it's kind of a weird, it's kind of a weird mix of like Survivor and like Shark Tank, Dragon's Den, and almost like Tinder also, like kind of like this like dating esque business experience. So pretty funny. Teams will like break up with each other and stuff. It's like pretty and get like pretty mad at each other. So pretty amusing. It is pretty cool though. My favorite part of that experience though is having like having a peer group, as part of it. You have like a WhatsApp group, and you're like, how are things going? And everyone's kind of able to relate pretty closely to that, which I really appreciate. But yeah, definitely a pollinator type experience. It's pretty focused on tech companies, so kind of those like venture scale companies. So today we work with a few of those, but generally we work with more like a classic, traditional like self-employed entrepreneurs today.
Yeah, the just before moving on with Antler, it sounds like it's like a cultural entrepreneur education. It's like a camp almost. It's like a combustion. It's like a pressure cooker for folks who are like, I want to start something. They probably filter for some high potential people, folks who have good and diverse resumes, and then you kind of, just like camp, there's that forming, storming, norming, like, and you kind of get, probably good little sort of like highs and lows from the experience. But at the end of it, hopefully a handful of people will have gone through some positive conditioning that like better prepares them for entrepreneurship. And that's a pollinator. That's a type of pollinator. 100%. It sounds like a good experience.
I really appreciated the opportunity to be there.
And so you figured out that you serve two types of customers. Tell me a bit about those customers.
Yeah, sure. So we did some analysis, and we just kind of looked. So we've got about just over 100, maybe 110 customers that are active on our platform right now, and we were just looking through like who are our customers, like what are some commonalities. In broad strokes buckets, we've got tech companies, and then we've got self-employed entrepreneurs. We get a few other ones too, but those are generally the large buckets. And it's pretty interesting to look at the differences between them, and challenging to appeal. So you have, again, so we offer like self-serve legal tools, and then we offer like, yeah, bookkeeping, tax, payroll. And on the legal tools side, those entrepreneurs that are tech companies rapidly outgrow us. We really end up referring to lawyers a good percentage of the time, just because those startup companies have pretty complicated legal needs, whether it's equity vesting, options plan, right? Too complicated for us. We refer out. And it's interesting too, because they also, this sounds bad, but most of them don't ever get any revenue also. So, but the ones that do get like a ton of revenue. So it's this weird dichotomy where you have like two different paths. One is crush it. One is you honestly just shut the company down with $0 revenue. And I think that's almost maybe an unfortunate outcome of the current, entrepreneurship focus on venture capital money. So there's a real big focus in the media. Like, I think these VC funds are so good about getting their name out there. And that kind of forces these companies to go for these big swings and go for these big technical ideas. And again, what ends up being is like most of them just don't get any revenue. So very, very interesting though. And then another category is self-employed entrepreneurs, 1 to 2 person owner operator. And what's neat is they almost always get revenue. So they're almost always, making probably like 160K plus would be pretty standard. And it's just so interesting to see this contrast between these two groups, and they do have different needs. So again, on the self-employed entrepreneur, much simpler kind of compliance needs, but they're going to need the tax and bookkeeping, payroll help like off the bat. So we've been gravitating over time a little bit more towards that self-employed group, simply because they're a little bit more steady for us. We do find the tech company a bit challenging when they have these complicated initial requirements that rapidly change over time, and that also most of them are only with you for 1 year, really.
You also talked about potentially a third group, which are partnerships. So going through with folks who, I imagine these are accountants and lawyers and other, maybe not accountants, but or accelerators that want to support more entrepreneurs starting businesses.
Yeah, sure. So I find it kind of funny on because we get a company at the start of its like when it's formed, that's a point when they're looking for new relationships with providers for all services. So you think you start a business, you need a bank account, you need a phone, you need a lawyer, like all these series of items. So we've been working more and more to think how we can integrate these different offerings into our platform. So for example, lawyers is a great one. It's a really funny. Like I would say 80% of lawyers hate us because we're self-serve business formation, legal tools. And then 20% love us because we give them so many leads because, people ask us a question. We just were like out of scope for what our software can do. We refer out. So kind of these interesting opportunities pop up more and more, especially as we start to get more volume through our platform. Another big one we're looking at is like financial institutions. Same thing. So when you incorporate a business, a key there is that you need to purchase shares. So even through the process of forming a business, you actually need to have a bank account. So it's kind of a neat opportunity for easy bank account offering. So we're definitely exploring opportunities in the future to kind of white label our product or integrate more closely with FIs and different service providers. So yeah, those are our two big ones we're kind of exploring. That legal integration. How do you get a lawyer into our flow really directly? And then how do you get the banks also into our flow where you can also like open a bank account kind of seamlessly? Um, yeah, pretty interesting. It's almost too like we have different, on our side we have our customers' best interests who we're focused on. So we would have a slightly different focus than some other providers. Like maybe someone wants to charge like a lot of money to a customer by an hourly rate, but our incentive, if we're referring or integrating with them, is that rate is as low as possible, so our customers are happy. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic, which I'm curious how it explores when like we want to grind the providers a little bit to kind of get the best offering for our clients, as opposed to them negotiating individually to kind of get a one-off service.
Yeah, bringing it. It's the bundling and unbundling. Just every
Yeah,
business is either bundling or unbundling something.
like 100%.
Tell me a little bit about your key relationships with your business right now. Are you so? I assume that you have funding from Antler. Like, are you venture backed at the moment, or
No,
you have
no.
you have one co-founder relationship? So no, so bootstrap to date
Yeah.
for the most part. You have three team members that aren't co-founders at the moment. Who else? Who else is on your team? Who else is sort of in your inner circle?
Yeah, sure. So I'll go through the team. So I'm pretty proud of our team right now. So I got a co-founder, Vishal. I brought my brother Dave on actually. So Dave is a pretty good younger brother. He joined the team also as a software developer. I think he's pretty much a co-founder too at this point. He's in pretty deep. And then I've got Avni, our full-time accountant, and then we've got Vishal, another accountant on our team too. Other key relationships. So we were actually bootstrapped, so we didn't get any funding from Antler, and we haven't pursued any external funding to date. So we've honestly just been sucking it up using personal savings, or now we're generating some revenue, which is a lot better on the checkbook. We You say like our lawyer is pretty useful, so we use Matt from Dickinson right now. He's been pretty good to us, giving us some templates. Other lawyers we work with also fairly frequently. And then honestly, I feel like I have a relationship with the government. So across the board, I'm in so deep in so many business registries, like the nuances of how they work. I'm in pretty deep with the CRA too these days. Like I actually call them, and I sometimes enjoy calling them, and like I feel like I'm friends borderline with them. So those are the key ones. Yeah, lawyer, then the government. Again, across a variety of services. It's so interesting too when you call the government, you get like different vibes from them. I'd say you call like PEI and or like Newfoundland and Labrador, like super friendly. Like they're really nice. Some smaller provinces too. Um, but it's quite funny just to get that different sense.
I actually don't. Yeah, CRA is very helpful to call. Everyone's, I think, is really scared, or but I find that they know that you're paying them, so I feel like they actually do have decent customer service. So that's a bit about your team relationships. Tell me a bit about your tell me a bit about your workflow, or tell me a bit about the relationship journey with a customer. How do you establish the initial contact with a customer? How do you build trust with them over time?
Sure. So actually communicating initially with customers are is very challenging. So we do a lot of activities that it's hard to relate to a customer exactly what we do. We say like we put stuff in a box, like business in a box, fine. We say we do registration. Okay, that one makes a little bit more sense. Then we say we do some compliance, some corporate governance, self-serve, and then they're kind of like don't really know what that is. Okay, fine. We say we do some bookkeeping. They don't want bookkeeping. They just want taxes, although bookkeeping is typically a requirement to file those taxes. So we're in this funny spot where we try to keep iterating on how we communicate to the customers. And I think ultimately what it is we're going to keep iterating on that, but we communicate to customers because they're looking for something and they find us that shows we offer one piece of that, and then they end up going for like the full suite of what we offer. Example would be they need to register a business in Ontario. That's like a pretty common one. So they would find us, hopefully learn a bit more. We post online, we put some posts out there, kind of learn a little bit more what's involved in that registration process, and then we can kind of show that we offer it. Um, we have two again, so we have two sides: self-serve legal, and then we've got the tax side. So really, the self-serve legal is like an introduction. Like okay, like we try to be pretty available for calls, for like book a free consultation type activities, just so people can put like a face to the name. And we find that self-serve piece is a bit more. It's like lower cost, and it's really just getting the customers to trust us a little bit. They see we're responsive, they see we're helpful, and then they end up trusting us to do bookkeeping, payroll, taxes, which is it's more expensive and it's a bit more involved. But it's kind of like over time, just building that relationship. And I'm definitely curious too in the future how we can keep deepening that relationship with these additional providers like that bank account piece, bringing that lawyer into the loop more directly also. Like I think it'll be neat when it's you trust us and our ecosystem, if that makes sense. And I'll be curious how that conveys over time. So I'll take a bit of a tangent if you'll entertain it. But
Go
I,
for it.
I work part time in the army, and it's so fun because the army's like really chaotic. Fog of war you hear. It's because there's just like a lot of stuff moving around and stuff is wrong. Like it just not everything's it's imperfect. Someone will say the wrong thing, misunderstand. So you try to get concepts ideally as simple as possible. Like the highest way, like the most optimal way to convey information in the military is to have a picture of a map, and then you have like an X drawn somewhere on that map, and you hand it to someone. You're like, go destroy something at the X. Like, like that's like the most clear. So I find it fun trying to apply those principles to Ribbon too. Like, how do we get our messaging down as crisp as possible? How do we get to something that's like bite-sized, understandable? And it's honestly still something we're still working on how to like iterate on that messaging.
There's um there's incredible opportunity to use language and even just conversation to help people build, pull out from the black box and be proactive, feel confident. And I have an accounting diploma. I went to school for business, and I mean, I didn't necessarily know about, I learned about pricing versus like specific government filings, classic. What's the meme? It's like, I'm really glad I learned cosine tan because cosine tan season is coming up, right? Like that's the meme around how math is like not practical in school versus
Yeah.
like learning the practicalness of business education. So I think that providing the peace of mind, it's about providing peace of mind. It's not about
Yeah.
faster, maybe higher quality, but it's about something different. I think the most people say, Michael Porter, Dimensions of Business. He says you're either faster, cheaper, or something new, basically. Like,
Yeah.
and and I think this something new is the peace of mind component. And I can understand how you probably are moving more towards these operator type of as a client versus startup, because startup is about rapidly increasing delegation, and operators definitely delegate, but they still sit at the top of their functional pyramid at the end of the day. I think they're the pyramid in the sense of like needing to know everything is being done, whereas with a venture backed business it's a little bit I think it's a little more decentralized. Maybe I have to work on that story, but using the military analogy, I've always thought that military language in business is it's a little bit disrespectful, to be honest. Like people use, blitz scaling, which is like a great book by Reid Hoffman, or this reference to OODA loops, which is about like orientation, which is about pilots like being able to orient themselves in like the fog of war, basically. And even just all the other, taking market share, and like it's got this very sort of military campaigns in marketing. It's all borrowed from war language, and I just don't want business to be that serious, to be honest.
Yeah.
What are your what is but because I'm talking to you, you're an entrepreneur and you are in the military, how much do you relate to like both of those, like both worlds? Like what is relatable about both worlds?
Yeah, for sure. It's so funny. I way toned down the military language, but I'm sure it slips in a fair bit. Just like what you said, there's so many, like, they love acronyms too. There's so many, honestly, like pretty aggressive words that the military likes to use, like destroy, shock, maneuver, aggression. Like they love those words. So I try to tone those down a little bit. But whether it's the military business, I mean, it's the core principles. Like, should you improve on activities that you do? And like, yes. Okay, military calls that an after action review. Fine. It's like a set thing. But should you still do that in civilian world? Yeah. Yeah, like you definitely should. But military has just kind of got a bit more formalized. Um, that said, like there's different contrasts too. So in the military world, it's for example a lot harder to change structures and processes. Like it's almost impossible. Civilian though, you can flexibly do that. So some of the military where you kind of have this more set processes, like set planning processes, like they're stellar, but they're also not always so applicable. That said, like if you have, I'll kind of caveat more. So like in business, you have day-to-day operations. Like let's say like a call center, right? And a business will be pretty good at continually kind of those continuous improvement processes. Like we're going to make this more efficient. We're going to answer questions better. But the military planning processes, typically what they like to do are they're imagining like you're going to attack something with a bunch of different components. So, you're going to be like, we've got all these different enablers. We got some aircraft, we've got artillery, we've got tanks. We need to get together and like do a plan for this set time period, which will go then execute. And then we're going to go execute the next plan. It's a little bit less continuous improvement, like iterating, like a business would do in day-to-day operations. So it is kind of interesting. You have these like very practiced tools, call it like battle procedure or operational planning process in the military, which again they apply ish to the civilian world. I actually always thought like a catering company would be great for military planning. You have to go throw a party, and you have balloons and you have food and a tent. I thought the military planning processes would be stellar for something like that, but that's for what it is.
Well,
Um, also,
that's what the Napoleonic, like that's how kitchens, if you watch The Bear, like it's based on millet, like it was invented by the French, like the chefs at the top, and then I'm sure they try to get along a little bit more when you're on the same side in the military, but
yeah,
like barking orders and kind of being rough and like incredibly high standards over relationships is
yeah,
I forget what the term is, but that's what it is. So you're
yeah.
right, you're nailing it, I think.
and and it's so funny too. So when you say like barking orders, it's kind of interesting. So there is sometimes barking orders in the military, but that's actually not the leadership model that the military aspires to, at least in Canada. So there's this concept called mission command, which I quite like. So instead of me telling you do this right now, go do it. Like sometimes if you're maybe on a battlefield, that would be an expectation. But you're honestly rarely on a battlefield. Like I'm rarely looking at someone saying, go move this from here to here. So typically what the military wants to do is they want the commander and subordinate to trust each other. And it's the commander's job to make sure the subordinate knows kind of the big picture of what's supposed to happen, what they're trying to achieve, and what the subordinate's role is in that, as well as making sure that the subordinate has enough resources and time to complete that task. Subordinate's job is to understand the big picture, understand where they fit in, where their boss fits in, and go complete that task to the best of their ability, knowing the kind of context. So it's a little bit less like you do exactly this, and a little bit more like I want you to fully understand what the game plan is. I want you to know the bigger plan. I want you to do the task that I'm giving you within the bigger context. So again, that's a little bit less like yelling, and that's almost a little bit more like I want to sit you down in a more calm environment and explain to you fully my plan. I want to make sure you fully understand piece by piece why I'm doing stuff, what the implications are, so you're best set up to execute on my behalf. I don't know if that makes sense. Like kind of a different take
Yeah.
than that traditional military you expect.
Yeah, there's different roles and you need to align on like a common goal, and you need to share an understanding around how to achieve that goal, and there's input on both sides of the equation. There might be a hierarchy, but it doesn't mean that there isn't contributions across the board between the command center and the field operator or the person who's on the front line, or what have you. I think that's a really good setup for how you think about the opportunity that you're building with Ribbon, because let's say the confusion or the perpetually new and, let's say, not quite understood processes of administering a business, so legally and from a financial standpoint. Let's call that the fog of war, right? For a business owner. So how do you help? It's not so much that you are the command center; it's more that you are a specialized operator, and so you have to provide your specialized expertise to the center of the business in order for them to continue to progress in what they're doing to grow their business. So how do you alleviate the fog of war for your clients, basically?
Yeah. So really, like, there's a percentage that we will never be able to eliminate. At a certain point, stuff's going to go wrong, and we're just going to roll with that. But before that, I almost have this like model for a company we're trying to build in our mind. Like, let's make sure we know all of our variables. Like, let's make sure we know all the important pieces of our business. That could be your finances, what kind of business you're doing, where you're operating, um, what different tax accounts you have, what the deadlines are for them, what you have currently owing, um, how close we are to filing items. Like, I actually think so. We have two software developers on our team, and that's kind of their job is to get a grip on people's companies and build a more and more complicated model. So we try to make nothing forgotten. So in this like fog of war, chaos is way easier to respond if you know what you have, right? You know what your company looks like, um, when your deadlines are, and then you can respond more effectively to that. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. Where like let's control what we can control, but let's also make the processes not too brittle. Like, let's just know stuff's gonna go wrong, whether on whoever's side it is, the government screws stuff up too, and let's just be prepared to roll with that as it comes.
I think that's a really good way to think about it, and that's what I try to do, at least with the clients that I work for. Is I say, here's what we control today. Let's move forward to this specific date, and we will continuously improve with different data that comes in.
Yeah.
And I do the same thing with my bookkeeping and accounting. Is I have a framework that I use, and as things come up, there's stuff that we control, which are costs and expenses, and we have a forecast. But then as I kind of learn, we now have to do remittances, or the HST number is going to change or something to that effect, or that gets updated as we go. Well, I really appreciate this chat today. Can you tell me a little bit about what your next goals are for growing Ribbon?
Yeah, sure. So we've got this new platform we've been working on for a few months now. So really, our goal is to get our platform out there. Um, as I'm sure any developers know, it always takes longer to push stuff out than expected. It's going to be get the platform out. We're then going to want to dig more into accounting, just making sure it's going to be more of a calendar based view, to be specific. So think like, when are your remittances and filings due for the next year? Just so to be able to more easily convey that to our customers. Again, whether it's like business registry, whether it's CRA, other tax accounts, payroll, just like one global view. And then we're also working on some partnerships. So it'll be, how do we get those lawyers deeper integrated? How do we get the banks more integrated? Yeah, so those three pieces: the updated platform, improving updated platform to have more calendar understanding of the deadlines, and then partnerships, which we're pretty excited on.
Well, I've really enjoyed the chat today with you, Nick. Today we touched on the overlap between military communications and alignment with your team, with business, and bringing a business to market. We've talked about the imperative to make entrepreneurship easy as collecting a paycheck, as you said. I really like that phrase. We also touched on some of the challenges of like just understanding and working through business growth and the different types of ways that businesses deal with administration, how startups work with, they tend to outsource and delegate a little bit more, and then how operators, they have to stay on top of it throughout the growth of their business, or even just sort of keep on building an approach that makes it automated and as frictionless as possible for them, even as they go and register in Prince Edward Island or Saskatchewan or wherever. So this has been the Conveyor Podcast. We talk about entrepreneurial communications, and power to you, Nick, and hope I see Ribbon and your mascot dog become really successful.
Yeah, thanks so much.